Yes,
Good
it's ready.
morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the Grant-o-thon Capacity Building Training Series. Today we have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Wei-Ming Tang. He's an associate professor of epidemiology at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And he has written many NIH grants, has reviewed many grants. Today he's going to be talking about an NIH section that's very important. It's called Significance. And so without further ado, I'll turn things over to you, Dr. Tang.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for the introduction and welcome everyone to join today's session. As Joe mentioned, I will talk about the significance section of the NIH grant application. The title of my presentation is Significant of Significance, which means like significant part is actually a critical part of the NIH proposal. It's usually 1 or 1.5 pages, to demonstrate why your study is important to the reviewer. Try to convince the reviewer that your study is important. And this is an independent score point for the NIH grant proposal. So this is very critical for the whole grant application. Also, like NIH defines a significance section as the point to convince the reviewer to try to let the reviewer to evaluate the potential impact and the value of the proposed research. So you need to understand that in this section you need to give a reviewer some very important message regarding the research gap, regarding why your studies will fill in the gap, and how it will benefit. So as part of the rigor of prior research, this section is supposed to address first strengths and the weaknesses of the prior research. Here, which means you need to summarize the previous research and identify the existing problems that was not solved or the research gap that was there. But an important thing to remember is don't downgrade the previous studies. When we write this introduction section to introduce our own studies for our manuscript, most of the time we tend to downgrade the previous studies. This is not great for a NIH grant application. You just want to identify the research gap. And more importantly, you need to introduce how the proposed research will address the weakness or gap identified. Since you already identified the gap and you know the gap, but you want to fill the gap, but you need to explain it how you will, address the gap by use which method, which strategy. I will introduce a little more in detail later on regarding how to write about how to propose the research strategies to address the gap. Also, at the end of the significant section, you need to have discussions of benefits or impact of your own work. You have to have your own work stand out. You are like for a significant section, you want to make your study stand on the shoulder of the giants, which means you need to put your study into the literature, find the weakness and the gap in the literature, and then you want to stand on the shoulder of the giants to solve the problems, to have benefits to the literature. So that's why we need a significant section. So there are certain few things need to be emphasized in the significant section. First, it should very clearly explain why the proposed research is important and how it will advance scientific knowledge or in human health. For scientific research, you have to have a meaning, like public health meaning, or the advanced research, the advanced knowledge, or improve human health. And in this section, you need to use very concise language to state that your study will advance the knowledge and improve human health. You don't need to focus the two broad things. You just need to focus on the research questions you proposed in the aims page. Also, it should also include a clear statement of the problems and its significance. a discussion of the current state of knowledge, a clear explanation of the potential impact of proposed research, and a discussion of the innovation aspect of the proposed research. Important things for significant section is you have to review a lot of relevant papers to get you very familiar with the literature in order to identify the problem very correctly. And you need to also understand the weakness of the previous researchers. And in this case, you will have your aims tailored and clearly present to the reviewers. And you are also proposed to do some research to how to address the problems. So you need to mention the methods you want to use and how your innovative aspect of the proposed research will solve the problem. But this section is different from innovation. You should be very clear. Most of the times people are confusing about significance and the innovation section. Excuse me. For significance, you actually more propose the ideas to introduce the potential research gap and why it is important and how you address the problem. So also in the significance section, it is very important to use clear and concise language through the significance section and use heading and subheadings to help reviewers navigate section and make sure the writing is well organized. Not all the reviewers may clearly understand your research field. They will use significance section to understand, why this research problem is important, why to address the problem is also important. Since you are trying to convince the reviewers, you should not think that the reviewers have the same knowledge as you have on the specific point of question you want to answer. So that's why you want to use the clear and concise language and make the things very clear to the reviewers to let them understand the real problems in your field, and then navigate them to the whole sections by using well-organized sections. I will use one example later on to see how we actually can organize the significance section. For the structure of significance section, you typically we can following the following structure. First, you should have an introduction part. By beginning with introducing the problems that your proposed research aim to address. In this area, HIV testing rate is low. Why low? And why the no testing uptake would be a problem. Then you want to provide relevant background information to help reviewers understand the context of the problem and its importance. There's typically the first and the second paragraphs of the introduction of the structure of the significance section to introduce the problem. The second, after you introduce a problem, you need to convince the reviewers why this problem is significant. You need to explain why the problem is significant and how it's relevant to human research, human health, or scientific knowledge, and provide evidence to support your claim about the significance of the problem. This I already repeat the previous message. I will use an example to tell in more detail here. The third one is actually the current stage of knowledge. It will describe the current stage of knowledge in the field and how the proposed research will build up on this knowledge. As I mentioned before, for the significance section, you want to put yourself on the shoulder of the giants. That's why you need to build upon your knowledge based on the previous researchers and highlight any gaps or knowledges or areas where previous research has been limited or you want to address in this study. So then you want to mention the potential impact of your study. You will emphasize the potential impact of your proposed research on human health or scientific knowledge, explain how your research will advance the field and improve understanding of the problem. You also need to mention whether your study is feasible. Most of the time, the reviewers will also evaluate whether your study is feasible, whether it's too ambitious, or like just answer like two next questions. So you need to address the feasibility of your proposed research, explain how you plan to conduct research and what results you will lead. And finally, you have a conclusion section or potential impact section to summarize the significance of your proposed research and its potential impact. Emphasize the importance of addressing the problems and how your research will contribute to the goal. To summarize, the significance section is typically you want to introduce the problem to see why the problem is important. Then you will identify the research gap or limitations based on your previous research. Then you want to introduce, how you actually address the problem and what's the potential benefits or impact of your proposed study. Remember that the significant part of your grant application is the opportunity to convince the reviewers that your research is important and significant. It only give you one or 1.5 pages, but you will use this and use different paragraphs to clearly, tell the story about why you need to conduct this study and why this study is important. Be sure to provide clear and compelling evidence to support your claim and make a strong case for your research. This is very important. You will try to use different figures, different previous studies to compelling the evidence to support your claim, to say that, your research is really important. For example, if we want to use PrEP to reduce the HIV incidence, we want to know why reducing the incidence is important, etc. So I will use one example from Jules R1 to give some structure monitoring or introducing regarding how we can actually, write the section. This is the example of an large application. It only have 6 pages, 5 to 6 paragraphs, 1 page, but each page they have a different and very clear purpose. For example, for the first paragraph, this grant is for using pay-it-forward strategy to promote gonorrhea testing and reducing the antibiotic resistance in China. So in the first paragraph, you need to introduce the problem. For example, in here, we mentioned that gonorrhea is one of the most common STD worldwide and in China, especially in China. So, and the prevalence of gonorrhea amongst MS in southern China has been reported as high as 0.5%. You want to mention that, use these figures to mention that this is a problem. If you attend the Ames page section was presented by Bill Miller, what he mentioned is that the first paragraph of the Ames page is actually want to scare the reviewers. Actually, this for a significant section is kind of similar. You want to introduce a problem. You want to say that, this is a huge problem, and this is it is urgently need to address this problem. That's why your study is very important in your field. Then you want to mention the significance of the problem. For example, in here, we want to introduce the problem of antibiotic resistance, especially in China. We indicated that the southern province of Guangdong, the rate of strain with decreased sensitivity to the medication by MIC is between it's increased from 34.4% to 46.5% over a 9-year period, which means the antibiotic resistance rate increased a lot in 9 years period. That was a big problem for the resistance. So you need to address the problem. And how to address the problem? There are several studies have been done. Then you want to introduce some information regarding the current status of problem. What have been done? What the previous studies have tell the advanced knowledge, and what the evidence previous study have been done. And then use this section, you actually want to, identify the potential research gap and the limitation of the previous studies. By introducing the previous studies, you will answer the question regarding what have not been done or not doing well. Then you want to propose a study to address the research gap and limitations. After you want to identify the problems and you want to address the problems, you propose your own idea or approach to address the problems. For example, in this study, we are proposing a paid-forward strategy, to try to improving testing uptake in order to identify more people living with gonorrhea and provide treatment to them in order to reduce the transmission and also reduce the AMR rate of gonorrhea among MSM in China. So this is a very clear logic. You want to identify the problem, says indicating why the problem is important, what's the research gap over there, and how you will address the problems. After that, you want to say that this strategy is feasible. It has potential impact. For example, our previous study already demonstrates that the trials among MSM by using paid forward is feasible and can increase the testing uptake. And the previous study also demonstrates that focus on did not capture the data on implementation. You also figure out still potentially address previous research gaps, and you will see how actually the impact of study, how you address the problems, and the feasibility and the potential impact of the study. So at last, you also want to have a conclusion section, but I did not summarize over here. Did not put this into this grant application. We instead put it at the end of the aims page. But in any way, we usually follow the structure of introducing the problem, introducing why the significance of the problem, the current stage of knowledge, potential impact, your proposed idea, and the feasibility of a proposed idea, and then conclusion. I think that's the very short presentation for today. I think introducing the significance is very simple, but how to write well, how to make it well organized is very essential and would need lots of practice. And I would like to welcome any questions or discussions with all of you. Thank you. Joe, back to you. So let's see what questions do we have, okay? I can see something. Do you have any questions? You can just, okay, there was one. What's the ideal length of significance section that you recommend? As I mentioned before, for the NIH grant is usually 12 pages. And for the significance section is usually the first 1 page or 1.5 page of the whole grant application. We usually put it as 1 page or 1.5 pages with 6 to 8 paragraphs, which each paragraph indicating different things, including the problem, the significance of the problem, the research gap and limitations, your approach, and the feasibility and the potential impact. I'm curious about your suggestion not to downplay the evidence. Does it even happen that you might get critical then for citing research evidence that isn't that strong? Yeah, I think this is very important. If you downplay the previous study and you did not understand the previous study very well, and if this is like a big scientist or or a reviewer, you will be in big trouble because people are more probably like trust the previous study, and they may have some problems that do not address well, but you can just tell the problem frankly, but not downplay the previous studies. Be respectful of the previous studies is very important, not just for grant writing, also for manuscript writing. You just want to give a clear, demonstration that that's the research problem, but without downgrade or downplay the previous researchers. The third one is, don't you think there will be repetitions or ideas of source in the cipher sections and the same sentence present earlier in the aims page? Okay, the aims page is independent from the 12 pages things, okay? The aims page is summarization of the whole grant proposal. You want to use one page to summarize the things you want to present in the 12 pages. For the aims page, you typically want to summarize the problems. The significance section is very similar to the significance to the aims, probably the first paragraph of the significance section. You want to introduce the problem, the things you want to address, and your approach. But the significance section will be more expanded. You will want to have more information expanded, give in more detailed information or more evidence about the research gap and your proposed research. And typically, it will definitely repeat some of the information because they are telling the same things, But the aims page is very important. It's not the most read section of the program proposal, So it will repeat some of the questions, but somehow it is don't worry about the repetition between the two parts because they are reviewed independently. No reviewer will worry about the repetition between the two sections. Okay. For smaller R grants that focus on formative research, how to address feasibility if without extensive previous work. For R grant is relatively easy. For the feasibility, you just mention that you have the capability, or your study team has the capability to conduct the formative research among the target population, or your experience by working with the target population. For example, if you are working with female sex workers, you can mention how your working group has been done with the target population. You want to mention that you have been have done some research with the population, so it will make the study feasible. And you want to mention that for the R34 grant is typically for like exploration grant. You do not need to have your intervention be ready at that stage, but you want to say that it is you want to test the feasibility of the intervention in the study. If you do not want to address the feasibility regarding the intervention, but you definitely want to mention that you have done some research among the population you work with. Okay. What are the important questions to ask when measuring impact of a study? So for measuring the impact of the study, typically we want to mention that what research what you are advanced the knowledge, you know, which new things you bring to the knowledge, and how that the new things will impact the health of the people. For example, if you're introducing an intervention, how your intervention will improve the behaviors of or whatever among the participants. For example, if we want to improve the partner service rate or partner notification rate, you want to say that, you know, how improving the partner service notification rate while reducing the HIV incidents or ongoing transmissions in a certain population. Okay. What is problem statement is different from significance of the study. Problem statement, I mean, should be part of the significance in NIH grant application. In NIH grant application, it does not have a specific section about problem statement. It can be integrated into different sections of the start of the NIH grant. For example, it need to be in the Aims page. It also need to be in the significance section of the grant proposal. Yeah. I think that's all the questions we have in the chat box. Do you have any other questions? Okay. If you have any additional questions, you can email me or Yusha. We can answer it, or we can answer it in the future sections. Okay. Yusha, back to you.
Yes. Thanks for Professor Wei for giving us such a fantastic lecture. And our next session will be delivered by Professor Jeff Tittaker, and he will give you a lecture about how to write the approach section of the NIH grant. So on next Monday, I will send you some pre-reading materials and the learning objectives, and also send you a reminder. So at last, I want to say thanks for coming today, and yeah, see you next week.
Thank you all. I'll see you next week.